The man my husband introduced as a friend knew things about me no one should. I was just pouring tea when my husband walked in. His arm slung casually around a man I had never seen before. "This is Ray, my old college buddy," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I smiled politely, but the moment Ray looked at me, something twisted in my stomach. His eyes lingered, not in a creepy way, but as if he already knew me intimately. It was unsettling. And when he said, "It's nice to finally meet you, Emily," I froze. Finally, I glanced at my husband, but he was already laughing at some old story, brushing it all off like it was nothing. I tried to play along, but Ray's presence unsettled me. Throughout dinner, he dropped small comments that made me feel exposed. Details about my childhood home, the scar behind my ear I always cover with my hair, even the lullaby my mom used to hum to me when I had nightmares. Things I'd never told anyone, not even my husband. First, I thought maybe he was just really good at guessing. Or maybe my husband had shared more than I realized. But there were things, private, painful memories I'd buried deep, that Ray brought up in passing, like someone flipping through a photo album of my life. The worst part? My husband didn't seem the least bit surprised. By the time dessert was served, I couldn't hide it anymore. I excused myself, locked the bathroom door, and sat on the floor trembling. Who was this man? And why did it feel like he knew me better than I knew myself? I didn't want to believe it, but a terrifying thought crept into my mind. What if this wasn't the first time we'd met? I stayed in the bathroom longer than I needed to, just trying to calm my racing thoughts. I told myself I was overthinking, being dramatic. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. When I finally came out, Ray and my husband were laughing like two brothers who'd picked up right where they left off. The warmth in their voices clashed with the cold unease sitting heavy in my chest. I forced a smile, but Ray's eyes flicked toward me with that same knowing look, like he could see right through me. Later that night, when Ray left and the front door finally clicked shut, I turned to my husband. "How long have you been in touch with him?" I asked. He shrugged, casual. "A few months." He reached out online. "We used to be really close back in school." I nodded slowly, but that didn't explain how Ray knew things no friend of my husband's should know. Things that were never online. Things that existed only in my memories. Over the next few days I tried to put it behind me, but Ray started showing up more often. Sometimes with my husband, sometimes alone, saying he was just in the area. I hated how he'd make himself comfortable on our couch, ask about my day like we had history. And then he'd say things, little things like, "Do you still hum that song when you're scared?" Or, "You used to love watching storms from the attic window." I hadn't spoken about the attic window since I was a teenager. I hadn't even thought about it in years. I began looking through old photos, trying to figure out if maybe we had met when we were kids. Nothing. No trace of him in my past. But the way he spoke, the way he looked at me felt too familiar. And the strangest part? My dreams started to change. I began having vivid nightmares of a different life. One where I was someone else, living in a place I'd never seen before with Ray. I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that Ray knew me from some forgotten chapter of my life, or the terrifying possibility that this wasn't about memory at all, but something deeper. Something I couldn't explain yet. I started keeping a notebook, scribbling down every strange thing Ray said. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, some pattern, some clue. But I had to do something. My husband, meanwhile, acted like nothing was wrong. He even started inviting Ray over more often, saying things like, "He's lonely, let him feel at home." But Ray already acted like this was his home. He knew where we kept the sugar, the spare towels, even the light switch in the laundry room that most guests always missed. I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind, or if I was the only one seeing clearly. One evening, while my husband stepped out to take a call, Ray leaned in and said softly, "You've always hated that painting, haven't you?" He was pointing to a framed landscape above the fireplace. I froze. I had mentioned it once to myself under my breath months ago. I'd never spoken about it out loud. My voice shook when I asked, "How do you know that?" He smiled gently, almost like it was obvious. "Because you told me. A long time ago." I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, my thoughts spinning. Was he gaslighting me? Was this some twisted game? But the fear didn't feel ordinary. It was deeper, older, like it came from somewhere inside me I hadn't touched in years. I began digging into Ray's background.
No social media.
No job listings. No school records. It was like he didn't exist until a few months ago. And then I found something strange. An article from over 20 years ago. About a house fire in a small town I'd never been to. One of the victims was named Raymond Ellis. The photo was blurry, but I swear the eyes were the same. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Could trauma make us forget entire people? Could someone from another life come back into this one? Was this about reincarnation, or something far more unsettling? My husband noticed I was restless, asked if I was okay. I wanted to tell him everything, but part of me didn't trust him anymore. Because what if he already knew? What if he brought Ray here on purpose? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living inside someone else's memories. Everything felt off. Small things like smells triggering emotions I couldn't explain, or certain songs making me tear up without knowing why. I started avoiding Ray, but he always found a way back into the picture. Once I came home from work and he was in our kitchen chopping vegetables like he belonged there. My husband smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. Ray cooked tonight. You'll love it, he said. I forced a nod, but my stomach turned. Every bite tasted like betrayal. Late one night, I went into the guest room where Ray had been staying. I had no plan, just this overwhelming need to find something. I opened drawers, checked behind books under the bed. And then I found it. Tucked in the back of the closet, inside an old leather-bound journal. The pages were filled with writing in two different handwritings. One looked rushed sharp. The other was mine. Or at least it looked like mine. The entries described moments I didn't remember living. Conversations that felt familiar but not real. And all of them mentioned a woman named Elise. A name I had never used. But somehow I knew it was me. I confronted Ray the next day. My husband wasn't home. I slammed the journal down on the table. What is this? Why do I remember things I've never lived? He looked up at me slowly, his expression calm, almost relieved. Because you did live them, he said softly. Just not in this life. His words hit like a wave I wasn't ready for. I backed away, heart pounding, vision blurring. You're insane, I whispered. He stood up, stepping closer. You don't have to remember it all at once. But it's real. We were together, Elise. They took it all away from us, but I found you. I couldn't breathe. I ran out of the house, heart thudding, mind spiraling. If what he said was true, if my memories weren't just dreams but pieces of something real, then what was my life now? Who was I really? And more terrifying, what did my husband know that he hadn't told me? I didn't stop running until I reached the small park a few blocks away. My breath ragged and my chest burning. I sat on the cold bench, staring at nothing, trying to anchor myself in the present. But how could I, when the lines between now and then were blurring so fast? Everything Ray said echoed in my mind. We were together, they took it all away. None of it made sense, yet it felt disturbingly real. When I got home later that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I called out for my husband, but there was no answer. A strange tension hung in the air. Like something had shifted while I was gone. I walked slowly into the living room, and that's when I saw it, the journal. It was lying open on the coffee table, pages ripped out, others marked with angry red ink. Someone had gone through it. I picked it up with trembling hands and noticed something new tucked between the pages. A photograph. It was faded and grainy, clearly old. Two people stood in front of a house I didn't recognize. The woman looked exactly like me, but not quite, same eyes, same smile, but her clothes were from another time. And next to her stood a man who looked just like Ray. My blood ran cold. On the back, in handwriting I knew wasn't mine, were the words. They said we couldn't be together. But I found a way. I heard the door open and turn sharply. My husband walked in looking calm, too calm. Where were you? He asked. I hesitated, clutching the photo behind me. Just needed air, I said. He nodded slowly, walking toward me. Ray told you, didn't he? The way he said it, no shock, no confusion, just confirmation. That's when everything inside me froze. You knew. I whispered. He nodded. I didn't want to. I tried to stop it. But it's happening again, just like before. He sat down, head in his hands. They warned me. If you remembered, everything would start over. I thought if I kept you away from him, you'd forget forever. My heart pounded as I stepped back. Who warned you? Start what over? He looked up, eyes hollow. The people who separated you two the first time. They said your connection was unnatural, dangerous, something that shouldn't have survived. Tears filled my eyes. So you married me to protect me? He didn't answer. Just stared at me like I was already slipping away. And in that moment I realized the truth was far more tangled than I thought. This wasn't just about Ray or even another life. It was about forces I didn't understand, people, maybe even systems that didn't want me to remember at all. And now that I had, what would they do to make me forget again? I stood frozen in the living room, my husband's words echoing through my mind like a warning I hadn't asked for. They said your connection was dangerous. I looked at the man I thought I knew, the man who had held me through grief, who had laughed beside me at simple joys, and suddenly he felt like a stranger holding back secrets too heavy to carry. My throat tightened. Who are they? I asked again, my voice sharp this time. He hesitated, then walked to a drawer and pulled out a worn envelope. Inside were documents, strange dated papers with symbols I didn't recognize, stamped approvals, records with my name written in different handwriting under different dates. There was even a birth certificate. Not mine, but someone named Elise Harper. My birthday. My face in a black and white photo. The truth was staring me in the face, terrifying and unbelievable. Before I could process it, the door burst open. Ray stood there, breathless, eyes wild. They're coming, he said. We don't have much time. My husband didn't even flinch. You brought them here. Just like before. The two men stared at each other with a history I hadn't yet fully understood. I stepped between them, heart racing. What's happening? Tell me now. Ray turned to me. They erased you once. Pulled you from me. Gave you a new life. He was meant to watch over you, not fall in love with you. I turned to my husband, stunned. You loved me. He nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek. But I was never your home. He was. I was just trying to protect you. A sudden vibration rattled the windows. Lights flickered. Outside, black SUVs rolled up in silence. My instinct screamed to run, but my feet wouldn't move. You have to choose, Ray whispered. Come with me and remember everything. Or stay here and forget it all again. But they won't let both options exist for long. I looked between them, heart split in two. But before I could speak, the front door burst open, and a woman stepped inside, older, severe, her eyes sharp with recognition. She's not supposed to choose, she said coldly. She already did. Years ago. And just like that, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed. The room was quiet, sterile, unfamiliar. A nurse walked in with a gentle smile and said, Welcome back, Emily. My head throbbed. I tried to sit up, but something in me felt different. Not physically, but emotionally, like I had forgotten something important. There were no flowers, no visitors. Just a thick fog in my mind that I couldn't clear. The days passed slowly. A psychologist came to see me, explaining that I'd suffered a dissociative episode triggered by emotional overload. No one mentioned Ray. No one mentioned the woman who burst through the door, or the choice I was about to make. My husband came to visit once, sitting silently by my bed. He looked like he wanted to say something, but all he said was, I'm glad you're safe. Then he left, without waiting for a response. Weeks later I returned home. Everything was the same. My books in their place, the same painting above the fireplace, the same familiar scent in the hallway. But something had changed inside me. There was a gap I couldn't fill, like I'd lived a life that slipped just out of reach. I asked my husband about Ray. He paused, then said softly, he moved away. Said it was better that way. And that was all. One evening, while cleaning the closet, I found the photo again, the one of the woman who looked like me and the man who looked like Ray. It had no date, no name, just those haunting words on the back. They said we couldn't be together. But I found a way. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't remember taking it. I didn't remember being her. But somewhere deep down, I felt a tug, like a whisper in the dark reminding me of a love that crossed time itself. Maybe I chose peace over truth. Or maybe the truth was too much for one lifetime. All I know is, sometimes at night, I hear music I don't recognize, and I hum along without knowing why. And every now and then when I pass a stranger in the street, I catch a flicker in their eyes that makes me wonder, what if the story isn't over yet?